Hello people, my name is Ivan and today we're going to be talking about the Git. Some of you might ask, Git? Everyone knows the Git, and I want to show you that usually a lot of people know something around these lines and not necessarily know what every command means. So today we're going to try and go through the most vanilla command usage possible and see where it gets us to. You ready? Let's go. Here are some prerequisites we need, and they are actually the first two links on the Google search for the word Git. So you'll have to download and install Git, and you'll have to have a GitHub account or any other account you wish. It's like GitLab or Bitbucket, whatever it is that rings a bell for you. You can use that if you want to follow along together. Right, so I already did install all of that and I have an account. So the ultimate test for you to see if it works or not, if you type a git in your command line, it should give you something like that. It means that it has been installed correctly. It's your system pass knows where the git is located, and you could start dealing with that. So let's get started and create a new repository. So what is a Git repository? You can think about it as a folder with version history, basically. It just stores everything, that all list of changes that have been happening with this folder and the files inside of this folder. So let's create a new repo and then we will try to clone it. Clone is one of the basic commands that you have to learn and use in your life as a software developer or as a tester or someone in the IT who works with repositories, with code. So let's do it. I'm gonna call it test repo because why not? And I'm gonna make it private repo and I'm gonna initiate it with the readme file. So we will have a file to mess around with from the beginning. This name was not bad. All right, so now we need to get it. So this repo exists in the cloud somewhere there on someone's computer, right? And we need to get this code into our local machine. So usually you have multiple ways of doing it. You could use the HTTPS as a command to clone, and this will look like that. So for this, you'll have to authenticate. And usually you'll have to sign in with your browser. That's option 1. And you could choose that if you're following. However, I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to use the SSH. SSH requires you to set up the SSH public and private key pair. And I already did that, and I have some keys. And actually, let me show you that I do have them. You can see I have my keys, and I uploaded the public one into my account. So now I can use it for any Git related commands. So if I do that, actually before I do that, whoa, what happened? Before I do that, let me show you that this directory is empty. See, there's nothing here. So let's clone it and see what happens. So this is the password. It is because my key is password protected. Your key will by default not be, unless you want to be super paranoid about it, as I am. So I'll have to enter my passphrase and click enter, and now I have a copy of this repo on my local machine. So let's have a look inside what it is. You can see that there is a folder which I just cloned. If you look here, I just have one file. it's not that exciting, but if you, how do you know that this is a Git repo, right? If you do the list all files, you will see that there is a Git subfolder here. So Git subfolder, if we navigate there, apologies, have a few files, and how do you know if it's a repo? Or if you look at the what's inside, let's say the config file, you can see that it's pointing to the our test repo, which we just created. Okay, so that's some fundamental knowledge that you could use in your life. Okay, so what happened that we created a new repo in the cloud. We get a copy of it, we cloned it into our local machine, and you know what time it is now? It is drawing time. Okay, so for drawing, I'm going to be using Microsoft Whiteboard app and this little tablet. So it's just going to help you to visualize what's happening, right? Which color should I use? Let's use the galaxy color because it's beautiful. So what's happening is we had a cloud, and there we have created our repo, which I'm going to draw as a something like that, right? Then what happened is we cloned it into our local machine. So now I have a copy of it locally. I'm going to draw a big box, I'll explain what that means in a second. So here we have multiple kind of states where your files could be. So this is just your file system, right? And there is another Git concept which we're going to talk about in a second, which is called staging area, right? And there's the last one, which is called whoa, I'm actually better at drawing, as you can see. That's called a commit area, right? So your files are living here, and they could be added to the staging, and the staging could be converted to the commit, and the commits could be pushed into the cloud. And it goes here and here, right? So it's not that you're locked. You could move your, let's call it, state of the file there and back, depending on your use case. All right, so now we're gonna talk. So we did talk about this command, about the clone. Now we have the files here, and we're gonna try to modify these files, look at the changes, and try to move them here and back between the stages. I'm not gonna be closing that picture, and I'm gonna be referencing it from time to time. Stay tuned. Okay, so let's look at the first command that it's actually a second Git command that you will need, which is git status. So this command will give you the status of your local copy. So you see that it says that you are on the main branch. We're going to talk about branches later. And it says there is nothing to commit, working trickling. It's okay, so let's look at the list of files. We have just one file, which we are going to edit. Again, I'm using the WSL subsystem in Windows. You could use any editor you want, or a command line. It's gonna work exactly the same if you use here, right? You could say and you could use whatever Windows text editor, maybe Notepad, to edit the file. I'm just gonna use Bash just because it's more convenient and faster for me. But usually Git is cross-platform, and every command that I show here should actually work on your machine as well. Doesn't matter if you use like Ubuntu or Mac OS or Windows. Okay, so let's edit the file. Come on. And you can see it's just empty file. So let's maybe just add a few lines. If I knew how to use it. Oops, something is not right. It's not working. Okay, so this was a 6 hours later situation, and apparently I screw up something in my environment and my editing files. I guess it's a bashrc situation. I don't want to go into details. So I'm going to use just a good old notepad for that. It's actually notepad++, but it's a good old better notepad. So let's edit the readme and add a line of code. I'm just gonna add my name here and save the file. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna back into the console and do the git status command again to check what has been changed. All right, so as you can see, there is a change which we just did. It says it's modified the file. If you remember the picture, right, we just did this change in the file system. So if you want to save it, you'll have to add it, you have to move it into the staging zone first. So let's do it. So to do that, the command you need to do is git add, and you will have to specify which file or files do you want to add. So there is a, if you just run this command like that, it's going to complain, I think. Yes, it's saying that nothing added, and it suggests me to run this command, which basically you can read it as git add all, like all files. So this is potentially dangerous command, so you need to be very aware of not misusing that. And why it's potentially dangerous? Because you could stage something that is not supposed to be staged. So it's always a good idea of checking or providing a file pattern to add. So for example, you could say read and add only readme matching files. So if you check the status again, you will see that we have just added readme file, right? Pretty good. So how do you move it back, right? We just moved a file from here, from this state to this state. Now we need to move it back, and git conveniently gives us a command. If you pay attention, right, a lot of the time git is trying to be user friendly, to have a good UX, and suggests what to do exactly. So if you're lost, you just read what's on the screen, and sometimes readme md. If we do git status again, you see we unstated. So we just moved file from here to here and from here back. All right, so let's run git add all just to show you that it also works. See, I run it and I just added all files, and readme is added to the to staging, apologies. Okay, so now we have moved file here and there, and we can move it in, make it a commit, and push it eventually, right? So how to do it? So once you have something staged, actually let's unstage everything, because it's going to be interesting to see. I'm gonna clear my screen just so you don't get too confused. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens if you try to commit. So, like again, if you just run this command, it's gonna complain. Oh, I don't have an identity. Interesting. Okay. 6 hours later situation. Okay, my apologies. It was a misconfiguration. Oops. So what happened is I didn't have a mandatory setup done for this to work. And git commit command was complaining that you couldn't talk to me unless you specify who you are. So I had to run this command, right? And specify my username and also the email, which is described how to do here. So you can easily search by doing something like git config github, and there will be an instruction of how exactly to do it. But you have to set up your email and you have to set up your username. So now let's go back to our command. So if I run this, right, it tells me that you basically cannot do anything because you have no changes added to commit, right? If we look at our pictures, it's basically from here, we're trying to jump over into the commit, which is a no-no. So let's make it legal and let's add a file. So I'm going to add readme and I'm going to check git status. Checking git status is important. And the reason is, again, you try to not commit something accidentally that you don't want to commit. In real life, you will accidentally screw up. So having a habit of checking what you stage and what you're committing is actually quite important. You don't really want to push the files you don't plan to push at all, right? So we have the file on stage. So let's commit it. So if I do this command again, it should complain because it will say that I have to specify a commit message. Oh, it's actually suggesting me to do it. And my bash is screwed up again. Apologies. Okay, so I figured it out finally. So if we edit the file, right, we just added hello from v1, and now we are ready to run this command again. It should complain. It should tell us to add a commit message. That's a one way. Or we could say git commit -m, and then we will provide a message. So it is very important to, well, not very, but it is has some importance to give a good commit messages for your sake and for your team's sake or future you sake. When you're going to be reading the history of the file changes, you don't want to say update or fix or bug fix, because it's not gives you much information. So say this was just update or readme file. But you can say something like that, and that's going to be good enough usually. But try not to provide any useful information. Give some information. It's going to help you. Trust me. So let's do it. All right. So what happened is, if we do git status again, we can see that we are ahead by one commit, right? Which means that it's actually a drawing time again. Okay, so why it's important to understand I'm going to choose this rainbow pen now. So think about this as a time going, right? So here is the beginning of time. Here is the time where you initiated the repo, right? And what happened is we have a copy of that. So this is like the cloud one, and you have a local copy of it, right? And what you have is you have this copy plus you made a change. Now you need to put this change in here. So this, I'm gonna do the ugly big cloud here. So the cloud version knows about your change which is only right now exists on your local machine. All right, so let's actually do it. Let's actually do it. So before we do it, we need to talk about one more command, and this is actually a git diff. Git diff is a command to show you what is it inside of your staged commit. As you can see, we are too late right now to look at it, but we're gonna look at another command which is called git log, and it's gonna tell you a list of commits. Again, look at that. So if we compare these two pictures, we have this is initial commit. This is a commit which has been created when I initialize the repo. This is this dot on this picture, right? And it says origin main, which is this one, the cloud one. Now we have our local main, which is add event to readme, which is this dot here. And you can see that origin doesn't actually know about that right now. And another important thing in after looking at this command is this thing, which is called a commit SHA, which is a hash of the commit. So basically, Git generates it based on a few parameters of your commit, like your name and time and the content, and that's how you can figure out that's how you generate the unique ID for your changes, basically. So let's do a push and summarize. So the push is this command, right? So we are trying to put stuff there. Okay, so it's asking my password. Again, your key might not have a password. Or if you authenticated by the browser, it will also not be asking you for the password. This is just my setup. Okay, so I have that, and if I do git status again, it says up to date with origin. And if I do git log again, it will say, you can see that origin now knows about my commit. So if we go into the browser and if we go to the repo, you can see that I didn't refresh the page and it was the only have an initial commit. If we go into the browser and refresh the page, you will see that there is two commits in here. One is the initial commit and one which we just pushed. If you look at the hashes, you can see that 5166 is this one and 08C8 is this one. It's going to be important in the future. Don't worry about it right now that much. It's not that important. Okay, so let's recap what have happened. We have talked about creating a new repo. We have talked about how to get it on your local file system. We have talked about how to move it in between the stages of, let's say, your local file system, staging area, and the commit. We haven't talked about how do you undo the commit, and we're gonna talk about it in the future. And we briefly talked about the pushing your changes into the repo. We also have drawn this ugly, ugly picture of trying to illustrate, to visualize it for you to how your parallel timelines of your file versions exist and how are they synchronized between each other. Hopefully this was somehow educational and you have learned something from this video. There will be more videos about the Git in the future, and not only about the Git, we're going to be talking about different things, including some testing tips and tricks, some test automation, probably some bash command foundations and baselines. So stay tuned, put a like, subscribe to the channel. And leave in the comments if you are thinking that I have missed something. Please leave a comment saying, hey Ivan, I need you to talk about that as well, and I will try to cover that in my future videos. All right, stay tuned. Happy testing.